Hey folks, it's about time to get started. It is exactly 8 o'clock right now.
Don't get anybody too close together here, right? One of us I'm just glad to be here at 8 o'clock, Mr. Chairman.
Living a dream.
Living a dream. Never rains, always said
Or, yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know, today is day 20 of the session. So we'll be, probably around noon, we'll be half finished. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, let's get started with a word of prayer, please. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, forgive us our sins. Give us wisdom. Give us hope. Give us the strength to do thy will. In Christ's name we pray, amen. Okay, we've got a couple of bills today. Representative Carson and Representative Welch. I don't see Representative Welch here yet, so we'll go with Representative Carson. His bill has a little bit to do with the Insurance Commissioner's office. And I see our commissioners here to see how good government runs. For our friends on the internet and all, identify yourselves and then we'll get started. And remember, on full committees, only committee members get to ask questions. Representative Carson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Carson, representative from representing Northeast Cobb and Southeast Cherokee County, District 46. Present today House Bill 312. It's a substitute bill. This basically is a department bill going over, most of it has to do with updating Georgia's already existing holding company laws. Holding companies are essentially entities such as JVs, limited partnerships, unconsolidated entities outside the insured company that the department reviews. These holding companies are set up primarily to protect insurance companies from further liabilities and also set up for tax purposes. Examples include management holding companies and other purposes. And they're set up usually to hold assets of various subsidiaries. A lot of this wording in here out of this 35-page bill is wording that's endorsed or at least recommended by NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners. This wording is being requested this year by the department for accreditation in a year and a half from now. If we don't get this passed this year, I think it's fair to say the department will be screaming for it next year. The significant revisions in this bill, number one, it requires the filing of a enterprise risk report. That's in section 3313.4. Second, and I'll walk through the bill. Let me just give the highlights real quick, and then I'll walk through the bill section by section. The second biggest revision is that it enhances the insurance commissioner's access to books and records, accounting records, and financial records of affiliated persons to better understand the financial health of the insurance company and the enterprise risk of the group. What we're really after here is the total risk to the company, not just looking at its books, its financial health, but also any entities, i.e. holding companies, that would pose a risk to the insured company. And that would be in the form of dividends, intercompany loans, various management agreements, and so forth. Third revision, it allows the insurance commissioner to coordinate the administrative public hearing process for the acquisition or merger of multiple insurers. Fourth, it grants the insurance commissioner specific authority to participate in what are known as supervisory colleges, or that's basically a group of regulators, and it's a group of regulators of U.S. and foreign insurance regulators to facilitate the group supervision over the insurance groups. So that's basically it. Let me start walking through the bill. I think the most notable change in the definitions, page 2, line 36, that's the where the bill defines enterprise risk. And then subsequently, along those lines, we have on section 33-13-4. Where is that, Don? I have the code section, but not the page number. Page number 17, line 577. This is the requirement for registration generally, and this later on page 20 within this section discusses the on line 703. Sorry to keep jumping around, but this is where it really talks about the enterprise risk filing. And what this is doing is basically requiring a enterprise risk report to go over various areas that could be of risk to a holding company. Do you want to comment on that? And you want to introduce yourself as well?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Don Roof. I'm with the Insurance Commissioner's Office. And as Representative Carson said, this is a new report. The idea is to identify risk within a group of insurance companies that might have an adverse effect on the insurance companies that we regulate.
I'm just going to move along. Section 13-5 on page 21. That section essentially covers agreements between affiliates, management contracts, dividends to and from insurance companies, and so forth. 13-6, that starts on the end of page 24. A lot of that wording, some of this wording, it looks like it's being changed all throughout the bill. Some of it is, some of it isn't. Some of it's being moved around, essentially. But 13-6, starting at the end of page 24, concerns access to affiliate records. 13-7 on page 26, that is concerning the ability to participate in a panel of regulators in regard to the insurance holding company system. And these expenses are borne by the insurance companies. 13-8 starts on the middle of line 20, page 27. That provides for the confidentiality of information shared in these new code sections, but it does provide for the ability for the Georgia Department of Insurance to share this information with other state departments of insurance, second, with bank regulators, and third, with any foreign insurers. 13-13 on page 31. This basically goes into penalties for violations. And those violations could be for failure to make a filing or failure to seek approval, particularly with regard to an acquisition or what have you. And lastly, on page 33, section 13-14, starting on line 1147, this basically establishes, this section establishes a look-back period of 1 year. At first I asked the question, I was telling the subcommittee yesterday, we went through about an hour and a half going through this line by line, and I was wondering if a year look-back period is sufficient, and Don and Jay and the commissioner assured me that it is. And this is basically a look-back period from today's date, look back 1 year. Do we need some more transparency in regard to mergers and acquisitions activity and so forth with regard to insurance companies and insurance holding companies? That's essentially the bill. I'm happy to go in more detail or answer any questions. There is one more section on section 2, line 1248. This basically, this is more or less to codify a long-standing practice for some organizations to provide medical malpractice coverage for their physicians. And again, this is pretty much one of the annual department cleanup bills for this year. Again, if we don't pass it this year, that'd be unfortunate, but if we will come back next year and be very much needing it for the department's accreditation process.
Okay. Any questions from anyone on the committee? Looks like you, got a couple now. Number 22, please identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, this is Howard.
This is for the, not for me.
Howard Maxwell, District 17, State Representative. I'm not sure if I got everything straight in my mind here on this, but I'm looking at line 899 on page 26. This is just something that's going to jump out to several people, I think, when this comes up, if they read over there about issuing subpoenas. I'm sure the commissioner has in his purview now, I guess, the authority to issue subpoenas in several different situations, but this has sort of been a hot button this year, it seemed like, with some folks. Do we issue that in a lot of circumstances? I've seen it talked about here, the subpoena.
This is the section in regard to access to affiliate records. Don, you want to?
There have been a couple of occasions where we have subpoenaed documents and testimony, but I would say it's not common.
Okay. I just know that's going to be a hot button issue if somebody reads this when it gets to the floor. I'm just trying to point this out to maybe a little heads up when it gets there.
And it would generally follow a refusal to produce, would obviously lead to this.
Okay. The only other question I got, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is are we giving any particular powers? I noticed over here in another section it talked about the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. A lot of it's on 28, 29 seem like that we're allowing them. Are we going to be required? A lot of places in here we're requiring notification to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, use of information, blah, blah. What are we doing exactly there, sir?
Most of this deals with using them as a clearinghouse. What we're talking about in several sections here is coordination with other regulators, and we often use them as a clearinghouse, but you'll also note that there are specific confidentiality provisions in here that they have to agree to before that takes place.
I'm just concerned that we were somehow...
We're certainly not ceding any regulatory authorities.
Okay. All right. That's just another point I wanted to... That may be a question when we move forward with this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. And as the commissioner pointed out, this language will be adopted this summer by the NAIC specifically for the accreditation that we go through every year, and that's obviously it's important that we have this in order to maintain our accreditation. With our accreditation, our domestic insurers could be subject to more specific regulatory oversight by all the states in which they do business. Currently, because we are accredited, the analysis and examination work that my division does is relied upon by other states. If we are not accredited, each of those states would have specific authority to come in and examine our domestic insurance.
Number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carolyn Hughley, State Representative, District 136. I bring your attention to page 31, section 331311, where you talk about the commissioner has the authority to reduce the penalties if it would create a financial hardship for the insurer. Is that customary, or I'm sorry, I'm on line 1089 and 1090, right in there. On page 31.
Commissioner may reduce the penalty of the insurer demonstrates the commissioner.
Right. Well, what this section is saying is that you could have a penalty of up to $1,000 per day with a maximum of $50. If that would create a financial hardship, we certainly wouldn't want to penalize and put someone into a solvency situation. Although I would hope $50,000 wouldn't do it.
So would it be waived, or what would happen?
It says it could be reduced. It doesn't say it could be waived.
Have y'all ever done that?
The commissioner has discretion currently under the statute with respect to certain violations and what those penalties may be. But most of them are set to a maximum, so our penalties could range anywhere within, up to that maximum. So
Okay.
it's generally discretionary on the part of the commission.
Thank you.
24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Darlene Taylor, District 173. I'm looking at Section 2 under the HMO section, particularly where it talked about malpractice. It brought to my mind the idea of other captives or organizations. I have in my district an organization that has a captive for their malpractice. Will these laws change anything directed to the captives?
It's my understanding that this more or less just codifies existing practice as opposed to changing existing
Okay.
practice.
It's not for a specific HMO. It's for a group of private practitioners, and they self-insure and have a captive. And I just want to make sure, will they be affected by these changes?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. This code section that's being amended is specific to licensed health maintenance
Okay.
organizations in the state.
But nothing in the rest of it addressed captives?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What's your number? 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, real quick, on that follow-up on Representative Taylor's comments, will they have to have a license in order to offer that malpractice insurance?
This is expanding the authority of HMOs that are licensed by our department.
But they're licensed for health insurance. Property and casualty, I mean, this falls under property and casualty license, the medical malpractice. It's a casualty.
Line. But it's narrowly focused to a situation where the HMO
But
has
will they have to have a
exclusive-
casualty license in order to provide that?
No, sir, it's expanding the authority under their HMO license. But only in that narrow circumstance.
I understand that.
Right.
But we require everyone else to be licensed to offer products in this state. But we're going to build an exemption for HMOs.
That's what the intent of this language is. Again, it codifies a practice that has been going on at least for the 20-plus years that I've been there, where an HMO has an exclusive provider arrangement.
Could you speak up a little bit?
I'm
more,
sorry.
Mike, please?
I'm sorry. This codifies a practice that has been ongoing for about 20 years, at least, where the HMO has an exclusive provider arrangement, and as part of that contractual relationship, they are providing malpractice when those providers see their patients.
But it's still a different line without a license. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I guess it's time for a motion then. Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Does get passed. Don't forget to submit your paperwork to rules.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda will be House Bill 179, Representative Welch. And while he's coming up here, I don't know what's in that box he's got, but while he's, would be nice if it'd be a sausage and biscuit, but it's not. But they have done an awful lot of work on this particular bill over the last several weeks, and I want to commend them on their due diligence in getting this bill forward. Representative Welch, please identify yourself and your guest, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Andy Welch from the 110th District, Henry Butts in Newton County. I have with me a very special guest from Henry County, Lauren Pierce, who's the owner of the independent pharmacy chain known as Moy's Pharmacy. A little louder, please. Okay. And he joined me today because he brought to me during the out of session, he brought to me an issue that he was facing as a pharmacist and small business owner. And that issue deals with pharmacy benefit management groups managing and doing audits on the prescription drugs that are issued by the pharmacist. As you know the state of Georgia has a pharmacy audit bill of rights. And that's what's before you today is an amendment to that bill of rights, which House Bill 179 does. Very briefly, it prohibits the recoupment of the entirety of the cost of a drug that's been properly dispensed, but there's a clerical error in the file. And if the clerical error can be cured within 30 days of the audit, on-site audit, or the written audit, then that cure would prohibit the recoupment of the entirety of the cost of the drug. What has happened is there are clerical errors that are in the file. For example, a call-in prescription is not noted in the file as a call-in prescription. It's referenced as a written script. Or there's a modification to the script and it's written in the file as a written modification, as a call-in modification. And if that's not correct in terms of how it was delivered, then the drug company will, or the PBM will recoup the entirety of the cost of the drug. The patient received the medication he or she was supposed to receive, in the quantity that he or she was supposed to receive, and as prescribed by the doctor. The problem is that there's a clerical error in the file. And so there's been a recoupment of those costs. So what happens is the independent pharmacist, businessman, loses the entire prescription. So it's an $800 prescription. All $800 is lost by the business. The business can't recoup it from the patient or the customer, and you can't recoup it against the doctor. So there's the problem. And the Bill of Rights was supposed to have done this, taken care of this issue before, but the language in it was a little squirrely as to making that very clear that you couldn't recoup those clerical errors. So what we've done on lines 21 through 26 and on over to lines 37 is the heart of the bill. And there is where you'll see that we struck the language that says clerical errors, the first sentence there on line 23. We said, however, such claims may be subject to recoupment. We struck that out to eliminate that ambiguity. And we actually made an affirmative statement on line 25 that says that no recoupment is allowed. This language has been vetted by PBM companies. We came to subcommittee with a different set of language, and other language was proposed by the PBMs. We rejected that language because we thought that actually left the horse out of the barn. We were trying to put the horse in and we reopened it. We worked on those last week to get language that we can both agree to solve the problem without creating a problem for them on their end, because they also have to do the audit. They have to make sure the drugs are properly dispensed. They have to make sure that pharmacists are actually prescribing the correct medication and that they're being paid correctly for it. So that's what this does, this new language that's provided on the second page, top 27, line 27, is provided, however, that recoupment shall be allowed to the extent that such error resulted in overpayment, underpayment, or improper dispensing of drugs or medicinal supplies. That's the text that keeps that regulation on and abuse of this provision. And then the fourth paragraph there just allows for the 30-day look back to fix those errors where they can be properly fixed with proper documentation. And then you'll see we struck paragraph 7. That's only because we moved it up to paragraph 4 to make it more descriptive. You'll see on the last page 3, we made it express in line 70 that there would be a 30-day appeal after the preliminary audit to appeal. We specified the duration for the appeal. And then on lines 80 through 83, we expressly exempted the Department of Community Health from conducting its Medicare audits from the clerical error. And that's a federal mandate that they have to deal with. So we expressly excluded them from the clerical error exemption here. Mr. Chairman, with that, what I just wanted to do is, Lauren is here to answer questions because he's one of my constituents. He's a valued member of our community. As I told the subcommittee, when I grew up going through Boy Scouts, I would go to Lauren's Boys Pharmacy. Tony's then, Lauren took it over after that. And I would buy my merit badge there. That's where I would go to buy my scouting supplies. This is a hometown pharmacy. We just started a produce department that are actually selling locally grown produce, so you can make your homemade chicken soup right there with good local ingredients. It's just that kind of place. And it's been that kind of place all my life. And so when they came to this problem, and they were losing $3,800, $2,400 pop on audits, that's when I said, this thing seems to be askew. We need to try to adjust this. This box here includes, just for illustration, this is 1 year of audits that this one company has to go through. 1 year audits. And in here we have a subfolder that illustrates all the different types of clerical errors where they have recouped the entirety of the drug for clerical errors. So, and this isn't make-believe, it's real. And I just wanted to emphasize that to you. And Lauren's here to answer any questions. And Lauren, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay for him to speak, I'd like him just to say a few words.
We don't allow a public hearing.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for the sponsor of the bill? Number 20.
Morning, Andy.
Good morning.
Why are we not applying this code section to the Department of Community Health? My understanding from my pharmacist that they come in and beat them up pretty hard on the very same thing.
That has happened. There are a few incidents where that does occur.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is that they're dealing with Medicare.
Medicaid.
I'm sorry, Medicaid-based products.
Right.
You're right, and that's the distinction that their construction of the federal rules requires them to do the full audit and then to go through that process. So that's why we have worked with the department for the exemption. They are not exempt from any of the other provisions. They still have to provide an appeal process. And I met with the department and the lawyers to go through an analysis. And what they do is they provide a very thorough appeal process. It's very clear and plain. So that if there is a clerical error, you can get that fixed through the process, but you've got to go through their appeal process. And they wanted to be able to utilize the process that they utilize that's in accordance with federal law to do that, as opposed to the way this was structured.
So the approach is more hold harmless by DCH for the other pharmacists?
I would say that's probably true, but
Okay.
I can't speak for them.
Right. And he can't speak for himself today. Okay. I'll ask you in the hall.
Not a public hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, number 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Howard Maxwell, District 17, again. Andy, I appreciate Representative Wetz you bringing this bill, because I've talked to several pharmacists. I got a couple back home that are local guys, and they have just been eaten up by this. And when I found out we were bringing this and talked to them about it, they were very, very happy. And you're going to make a lot of friends out here by doing this. The question I got is okay, the recoupment. We issue the prescription, the company pays us, they come back and do an audit. They don't, the pharmacists don't have to write a check to pay them back. They take that out of future claims that's coming in, right?
That's correct.
Now, if there's some disagreement about this, okay, we've got codified in the law right here what it's supposed to be, but what's going to be the stick that the pharmacists are going to have if they say, no, we're not agreeing with this, and you go through the appeals process and everything else, and they actually go ahead and just refuse to give the money back or pay them in the future? Have we got any stick in place or anything to force them to comply if necessary, or is that going to be necessary, I guess is my question.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a good question. And in this bill, we don't raise any enforcement issues. We're just trying to clarify the rights of individuals through the appeal process. And I don't know, and I honestly do not know the answer to your question. I don't know if there's another provision in the law that specifies what what form of enforcement the pharmacist may use, what the tool may be for the pharmacist to go against the PBM. My sense of it would be that it would be contractual. It would be based upon the contract that they have with the PBM in terms of the audit and providing them customers. But to be quite honest, I
Okay.
do not know the answer.
Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing this.
24.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Darlene Taylor, District 173. And Howard, I wanted to thank you because I was going down those same lines, where was the stick. But I also just wanted to verify, I know today on the floor we'll be taking a House Bill 209 that deals with pharmacy security paper. Is this something that's included in your audit, the way the prescriptions are filled, and will you be affecting these two bills together in any way?
No, ma'am. We won't.
They don't look for that type of use, the security paper issue in their audits.
No, I think that they do actually check the security paper issues, but no, this will not affect
Okay.
that, because you still have to produce, if you show a clerical error, the numbers didn't match,
Mhm.
you still have to produce the document that says that what you did was correct.
Okay.
So when it's an initial look at the file, as you in all of your business, you'll put a lot of files in storage and keep them for a number of years. So when you go rummaging through those files, you may find that the prescription is missing. Well, there's a process for providing an averment from the doctor that says, hey, yes, I issued this script on this day. Here's my attestation. Here's my affidavit that says that I've done that. And that's what the department will take. The department will take sometimes these affidavits to say that the script was issued. It's not a new script. It's the old script obtained from the doctor that is then sworn to as being a valid document and issued accordingly. And so that gives the pharmacist the ability to go back and make sure that their files are corrected. So
Okay.
I don't think it would affect it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bruce Williamson, District 115. Thank you, Representative Welch, for bringing this. We've all received numerous examples from our pharmacist friends. One childhood friend of mine, he ticked off the wrong origin code, got hit $850, boom, out of his earnings. So I think all of us understand the need for this. My question is, when will this be implemented, and will there be any kind of look-back period? How does this practically affect the audit process for the pharmacists? Will it be retroactive at all, or is it from when will the bill be effective?
It'll be effective
July
by the
1st?
default, July 1st, because we didn't put an effective date, a specified effective date in it, so we're going to let that be July 1st. And no, there would not be any retroactivity to it. It would just be going forward.
So all of our pharmacists are still subject to this take back until the bill, assuming the bill legislation gets passed and goes into force.
Yes, sir. I think if I were the pharmacist, I would argue that the intent of the bill, not this bill, but the intent of the original Bill of Rights was to cover exactly what we're covering. We're just making it more expressly clear than it was apparently before. So and that's what I would argue. But I'm not a pharmacist.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jason Shaw. Representative Welch, I just wanted to thank you. I know we've been through quite a couple of hearings on this in subcommittee, and it's obvious that you've worked real hard to work with the PBMs out there to come to an agreement. And it was a good bill, a good intent, and then you've been able to work on any issues that others had. So everybody's behind this bill that was affected by it. So I appreciate your work in bringing everybody to the table and coming to this kind of agreement. It's a good bill.
Representative Shaw, thank you. I really couldn't have done it without your help and the chairman's help, because it requires a lot of people looking at it and asking the good questions. The committee asked good questions, so subcommittee asked good questions. So it was a team effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Number 20.
Also, I would encourage you to look at a Senate bill that was passed in 2009 and 8, but then signed by the governor in 2009, that puts the PBMs under licensure within the Insurance Commissioner's Department. That bill may give you some guidance as far as the stick. Really good senator passed that bill. After a lot of bloodletting.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, doesn't look like I see any additional questions. Ready for a motion? Move to pass second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Don't forget to go see the rules, Chairman, get your paperwork filled out.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all. Y'all, meeting is adjourned. Hold on one second. Yes, ma'am.
Before we adjourn, I just want you all to know today is State Farm Day, and you all are invited to lunch over at the Twin Towers building, and we hope you will join us.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.